What happens when a racist cop pulls over his new boss and doesn't realize it until it's too late? Officer Hutchins saw a black woman in an expensive car and assumed she didn't belong. He harassed her, threatened her, and humiliated her on the side of the road. Then she walked into the police station, and his entire world collapsed. You won't believe what happened next. The alarm went off at 6 a.m., but Chief Denise Richardson had been awake for an hour already. First-day jitters. Even after 22 years in law enforcement, even after commanding respect in 3 different precincts, even after earning every commendation and promotion through sheer excellence, this felt different. Because today, she wasn't just starting a new job, she was making history. Denise Richardson was about to become the first black female police chief of the 12th Precinct, one of the largest and most troubled districts in the city. The mayor had personally recruited her, laying out the challenge during a private dinner 3 months ago. "The 12th is broken," Mayor Wells had said bluntly. "Old guard culture, excessive force complaints, community relations in the toilet. I need someone who can't be intimidated, someone who'll actually change things. That's you, Denise." Denise had accepted, knowing exactly what she was walking into. Resistance, resentment. Men who'd spent decades in a system that rewarded aggression and protected its own, suddenly answering to a woman who looked like the communities they policed. But she'd faced worse, and she'd won. Now, standing in front of her bathroom mirror, adjusting the collar of her crisp white shirt under a navy blazer, Denise felt ready. Her natural hair was styled in a professional twist-out, her makeup minimal but polished. She looked at herself and saw what she always saw. A cop. A leader. Someone who'd earned every inch of respect she commanded. She grabbed her keys, her badge, the chief's badge, still shiny and new, and headed out to her car. A black BMW sedan, 6 years old but immaculately maintained. She'd saved for 3 years to buy it outright, no car payment, a small symbol of everything she'd worked for. The drive to the 12th Precinct was supposed to take 30 minutes. Denise had timed it twice over the weekend, learning the route, noting landmarks. She was scheduled for an 8:30 a.m. briefing with the entire department, her first official address as their commander. She couldn't be late. Traffic was light as she merged onto the highway, classic jazz playing softly on the stereo. Denise let herself relax for a moment, mentally rehearsing her speech. Firm but fair. Clear expectations, open door policy, by the book every time, no exceptions. She checked her rearview mirror out of habit, old cop instinct, and noticed a patrol car 3 cars back, 12th Precinct markings, one of her officers probably heading to the same morning briefing. Small world, she thought with a slight smile. But then the patrol car changed lanes, moved up 2 cars, and slipped in directly behind her. Close. Uncomfortably close. Denise's cop instincts kicked into high alert. She checked her speedometer, exactly the limit, checked her mirrors, all clear. Her registration was current, her inspection sticker valid, her taillight functioning. There was absolutely no reason for that patrol car to be following her, and yet it was. She maintained her speed, stayed in her lane, kept her hands visible on the wheel. She knew the playbook because she'd written versions of it herself. Don't give them a reason. Stay calm. Document everything. The patrol car stayed behind her for 2 miles. Then its lights flashed, blue and red, painting the interior of her BMW. Denise's jaw tightened. She put on her turn signal and carefully pulled onto the shoulder. The patrol car followed. As she put her car in park and lowered all 4 windows, another precaution she'd learned the hard way, she allowed herself one moment of frustration. This was not how she'd planned to meet her officers. Officer Brad Hutchins had been having a good morning until he saw the BMW. He'd grabbed coffee at his usual spot, flirted with the barista who always laughed at his jokes, and was cruising toward the precinct for the morning briefing. Some new chief was starting today, a woman supposedly, which was already a joke. But Hutchins wasn't worried. He'd outlasted 3 commanders already. This one would be no different. Then he saw the car, black BMW, newer model, expensive, driven by a black woman. In his mind, the math was simple. Black person plus expensive car equals suspicious. Either it was stolen, bought with drug money, or she was someone's girlfriend living off his wallet. Either way, worth checking out. He followed her for a while, running the plate. It came back clean, registered to a Denise Richardson, no warrants, no flags. That meant nothing. Criminals got clean cars all the time. When she didn't give him a reason to pull her over, didn't speed, didn't swerve, didn't do anything wrong, Hutchins made his own reason. Suspicious vehicle was vague enough to cover anything. He hit his lights. The BMW pulled over immediately, smoothly, all windows already down. Hutchins noticed that detail, the windows. Most innocent drivers forgot that part. But criminals knew the routine. This woman knew the routine, definitely suspicious. He radioed dispatch, or rather, he should have. But calling in a traffic stop meant creating a record, and records meant supervision could question his decisions later. Better to keep this unofficial. He approached the driver's side, hand resting casually near his weapon. Not because he felt threatened, the woman was alone and he outweighed her by 80 pounds, but because he liked how it looked. Authoritative, in control. The driver sat perfectly still, hands at 10 and 2 on the steering wheel, head facing forward. She was in her 40s, professional clothing, natural hair. Pretty, if he was being honest. Not that it mattered. License and registration, Hutchins said, not bothering with pleasantries. The woman turned her head to look at him. Her eyes were calm, almost unnervingly so. Good morning, officer. May I ask why I was pulled over? Hutchins didn't like the question, didn't like her tone, too confident, too comfortable, like she thought she had rights or something. I'll ask the questions, he said sharply. License and registration. Now. I'd be happy to provide them, the woman said, her voice still calm, but I'm entitled to know the reason for the stop. What traffic violation did I commit? Hutchins felt his irritation growing. Here we go. Another one who watched too many YouTube videos about constitutional rights and thought they could argue their way out of a ticket. Ma'am, you were driving suspiciously, weaving between lanes. I haven't changed lanes once since getting on the highway, she replied evenly. I've been in the right lane for the past 3 miles, so I'll ask again, why was I pulled over? The way she said it, not aggressive, not scared, just matter of fact, it threw Hutchins off his script. Most people were nervous during traffic stops, apologetic, eager to please. This woman was treating him like an equal, like she had the authority to question him. Ma'am, I'm not going to ask again. License and registration. The woman held his gaze for another moment, then slowly reached for her purse. Every movement was deliberate, visible, careful. She pulled out her wallet and handed him her driver's license. Hutchins examined it. Denise Richardson, age 46, address in a decent neighborhood. Not great, not terrible. The kind of place where people scraped and saved to get out of the rougher parts of the city. Registration? He demanded. She reached into her glove compartment and handed him the papers. Everything was in order. Current insurance, current registration. Car was paid off, titled in her name. Hutchins stared at the documents, then at the BMW, then back at Denise Richardson. Nice car, he said, his tone making it clear it wasn't a compliment. How does someone like you afford a car like this? There it was. The question he'd been building up to. The one that always revealed the truth. Denise's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Someone like me? Yeah, Hutchins said, emboldened now. I mean, this is an expensive vehicle. Just curious how you came by it. I bought it, Denise said simply, with money I earned. From my job. Uh-huh. And what kind of job would that be? I work in law enforcement. Hutchins actually laughed. Right, sure you do. He looked her up and down. Let me guess. Dispatcher, desk clerk, parking enforcement? The insult was deliberate. Denise heard it, felt it, cataloged it. I'm going to give you one chance, she said quietly, to check your system and see exactly who I am before this goes any further. Hutchins heard the warning in her tone and ignored it. He'd been a cop for 8 years. He knew how this worked. People bluffed all the time, trying to intimidate him with empty threats about knowing their rights or calling their lawyer or whatever. This woman was no different. Ma'am, I think you should step out of the vehicle, Hutchins said. I'd like to conduct a search. On what probable cause? I don't need to explain myself to you. Actually, Denise said, her voice still calm but with an edge now. You do. Fourth Amendment, unreasonable search and seizure. You need probable cause or my consent. You have neither. Hutchins' face flushed. Ma'am, don't make this harder than it needs to be. Step out of the car. No. That one word hung in the air between them. A line drawn, a challenge issued. Hutchins reached for his radio, finally ready to call for backup, ready to escalate this into an arrest situation if necessary. This woman needed to learn respect, needed to understand that he was the authority here, not her. But before he could key his mic, Denise spoke again. Officer Hutchins, she said, reading his name tag, I'm going to tell you something, and I strongly suggest you listen. In approximately 15 minutes, you're going to walk into your morning briefing, and when you do, you're going to see me standing at the front of that room. And then you're going to realize exactly what you just did. And your career, everything you've worked for, is going to flash before your eyes. Hutchins stared at her, his finger frozen above his radio button. So I'm giving you one chance, Denise continued. Let me go. Right now. Apologize for wasting my time, and maybe we can forget this happened. For a split second, doubt crept into Hutchins' mind. Something about her certainty, her complete lack of fear. But then his pride kicked back in. His ego. The same ego that had gotten him 3 official complaints and a dozen unofficial ones that had been buried by his lieutenant. You're under arrest, he said, opening her car door, for obstruction and failure to comply with lawful orders. Denise didn't resist. She stepped out of the car, hands visible, movements controlled. But as Hutchins reached for his handcuffs, she said one last thing. You should have checked who I am. Hutchins never put the handcuffs on. At the last second, something stopped him. Maybe survival instinct, maybe the absolute certainty in Richardson's voice. Instead, he stepped back. Get back in your car, he said gruffly. I'm letting you off with a warning this time. How generous, Denise said, her tone flat. She got back in her BMW without another word. Hutchins watched her drive away, his heart pounding. That interaction had rattled him more than he wanted to admit. The way she'd looked at him, the way she'd known his name, the absolute confidence in her warning. He shook it off. She was probably just some social worker or city employee trying to sound important. He'd dealt with types like that before. They always backed down. He got back in his patrol car and headed toward the precinct. The morning briefing was in 10 minutes, and Lieutenant Morrison hated when officers were late. Denise arrived at the 12th precinct at 8:20 a.m., 10 minutes before the briefing was scheduled to start. Her hands were steady on the steering wheel as she pulled into the spot marked CHIEF. But inside, she was processing what had just happened. Officer Hutchins had profiled her, pulled her over without cause, questioned how she could afford her car, demanded to search her vehicle, and nearly arrested her. On her first day. It was almost perfect, in a terrible way, because now she knew exactly what kind of culture she was dealing with. And she had documentation. Her phone had recorded the entire interaction, tucked in her blazer pocket with the camera facing out. Deputy Chief Maria Santos was waiting at the entrance. She was a sharp-eyed Latina woman in her 50s who'd been the interim chief for the past 3 months. Chief Richardson, Maria said, extending her hand. Welcome to the 12th. Thank you, Maria. Denise shook her hand firmly. Sorry I'm running a bit behind. Had an interesting morning. Maria's eyebrow raised. Already? I'll tell you later. Right now I need to meet my officers. They walked through the precinct together. The building was exactly what Denise expected. Decades old, institutional beige walls, the smell of coffee and old paperwork. Officers glanced up as they passed, their expressions ranging from curious to skeptical to openly hostile. How bad is the resistance going to be? Denise asked quietly. Worse than you think, Maria admitted. Morrison and his crew have been here 20-plus years. They're used to running things their way. A few of them already filed transfer requests when they heard about your appointment. Let them transfer. I need people who want to be here. Maria smiled slightly. That's what I told them you'd say. They reached the briefing room. Through the window, Denise could see about 40 officers milling around, drinking coffee, laughing. The energy was casual, relaxed. They had no idea their world was about to change. "Ready?" Maria asked. "Always." Maria opened the door and stepped inside. "Attention! Chief on deck!" The room fell silent. 40 pairs of eyes turned toward the door. Denise walked in, her posture perfect, her expression calm but authoritative. She scanned the room, taking in faces, reading body language. Most looked surprised. Some had clearly expected a man despite the name. A few looked openly resentful. 2 young officers in the back, both women of color, looked almost hopeful. And then she saw him. Officer Brad Hutchins, standing near the middle of the room with a cup of coffee halfway to his lips. His face had gone completely white. Their eyes met. Recognition slammed into him like a freight train. The woman from the traffic stop, the BMW. The warning. "You're going to see me standing at the front of that room." Oh God. Oh God, no. Denise held his gaze for exactly 3 seconds, long enough to make her point, then moved her attention to the rest of the room. "Good morning," she said, her voice carrying easily. "I'm Chief Denise Richardson. As of today, I'm your commanding officer. I know change is difficult, and I know some of you aren't happy about my appointment. That's fine. You don't have to like me. But you will respect this badge, and you will follow my orders. Is that clear?" A mumbled chorus of, "Yes, Chief," rippled through the room. Hutchins said nothing. He couldn't. His brain was still short-circuiting. "I've spent the past 3 months reviewing personnel files, incident reports, and community complaints," Denise continued. "And I'll be blunt. This precinct has a problem. Excessive force complaints are up 40%, community trust is at an all-time low, and internal accountability is virtually non-existent." Lieutenant Morrison, a thick-necked man with gray temples, crossed his arms. "With all due respect, Chief, those numbers don't tell the whole story." "You're right, Lieutenant, they don't. So let me tell you the rest of it. 7 officers in this precinct are currently under investigation for use of force violations. 3 are facing civil rights lawsuits, and in the past 2 years this department has paid out over $2 million in settlements. That's the story." The room was dead silent now. "Things are going to change," Denise said. "Starting today. Body cameras will be worn and activated during every interaction. Reports will be filed promptly and honestly, and any officer who violates department policy or citizen rights will face immediate consequences. No exceptions, no protection, no second chances for serious violations." She paused, letting that sink in. "I know what some of you are thinking, that I'm here to make your jobs harder, that I don't understand what it's like on the streets. Let me address that right now. I've been a cop for 22 years. I've worked patrol, narcotics, and homicide. I've made over 300 arrests. I've been shot at. I've been in fights. I know exactly what this job demands. And I also know that 99% of good police work happens without a single use of force." A few officers nodded. Hutchins stared at the floor. "My door is always open," Denise concluded. "If you have concerns, bring them to me. If you see problems, report them. And if you can't work within these new expectations, there's the door. Any questions?" Silence. "Good. Lieutenant Morrison, I want to see you in my office in 5 minutes. Deputy Chief Santos will handle assignments for today." Dismissed. The officers began filing out. Hutchins tried to blend into the crowd, but Denise's voice stopped him. "Officer Hutchins." "My office. Now." He froze. Every officer within earshot turned to look at him, curiosity and dread on their faces. Hutchins felt his throat close up. "Yes, ma'am," he managed. The walk to the chief's office felt like a death march. Other officers gave him wide berth, sensing something was wrong. Maria led the way, saying nothing, but her expression was grim. The chief's office was being reorganized, boxes of the previous chief's belongings stacked in one corner, new furniture being arranged. Denise stood behind the desk, arms crossed, waiting. "Close the door," she said. Hutchins did. His hands were shaking. "Sit." He sat. Denise remained standing, looking down at him. The power dynamic was unmistakable. "Tell me, Officer Hutchins," she said quietly, "do you remember what happened approximately 45 minutes ago on Highway 9? "Chief, I can explain." "Do. You. Remember?" "Yes, ma'am." "Good. Because I remember too. I remember you pulling me over without cause. I remember you questioning how I could afford my car. I remember you demanding to search my vehicle without probable cause. And I remember you attempting to arrest me when I refused to violate my own constitutional rights." Hutchins's face was red now. "I didn't know. You didn't know I was a police chief. That's the problem, officer. You didn't know I had power. You didn't know I could end your career. And because you didn't know those things, you felt comfortable treating me with complete disrespect." She leaned forward, her hands flat on the desk. "But here's what you should have known. I'm a human being. A citizen. Someone who deserves to be treated with basic dignity regardless of my profession or my position. And you failed to do that. I'm sorry, Chief. It was a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. You saw a black woman in a nice car and made assumptions. You've probably done it dozens of times before to people who didn't have the power to fight back." Hutchins said nothing. What could he say? Denise straightened up. "I recorded the entire interaction on my phone. Audio and video. It's now evidence in your personnel file. Lieutenant Morrison will be conducting a formal investigation starting today. Chief, please. I'm not finished. While that investigation is ongoing, you're on desk duty. Badge and gun turned in by end of shift. And if I find out you've pulled this kind of stunt before, and I will find out, you're fired." Hutchins felt the room spinning. "Chief Richardson, I have a family. So do the people you've been harassing." Denise cut him off. "So do the citizens who pay your salary and expect you to protect them, not profile them. Your family is not my concern. Your conduct as an officer is—" She walked around the desk and opened the door. "Get out of my office." Hutchins stood on shaky legs and walked to the door. As he passed her, she said one more thing. "You had a chance to do the right thing this morning. You could have treated me with respect. You could have admitted your mistake and let me go. Instead, you doubled down. That tells me everything I need to know about your character." He left. The door closed behind him. Denise sat down heavily in her chair. Her first hour as chief, and she'd already had to discipline an officer. It wasn't how she'd wanted to start, but it was necessary. Maria knocked and entered without waiting. "Well?" That was dramatic. "Just wait," Denise said. "It's going to get worse before it gets better." She was right. By lunchtime, every officer in the precinct knew what had happened. The story spread like wildfire. Hutchins had pulled over the new chief, tried to search her car, nearly arrested her. Some officers found it grimly amusing. Others saw it as vindication of their suspicions that Richardson was out to get them. Lieutenant Morrison was in the latter camp. He'd been running the 12th precinct in all but title for years. 3 chiefs had come and gone, but Morrison stayed, the real power behind the desk. He protected his guys, made sure complaints disappeared, kept the union happy. And now this woman, this outsider, was threatening to tear down everything he'd built. He found Hutchins in the locker room at shift change, looking like a man attending his own funeral. "Brad," Morrison said, closing the door behind him, "we need to talk." Hutchins looked up, desperation in his eyes. "LT, I'm done. She's got me on desk duty. She recorded the whole thing. My career is over." "Not if we play this right," Morrison said, lowering his voice. "Listen to me. Richardson is new. She doesn't know how things work here yet. She doesn't know that every officer in this precinct has your back." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we fight this. We claim you had legitimate suspicion. We say she was acting suspicious, evasive, that you followed procedure. It's her word against yours. She has it on video. So what? Video can be interpreted different ways. We get the union involved. We file a grievance. We make her first week so difficult that she realizes she can't just come in here and start firing people." Hutchins wanted to believe him, wanted to think there was a way out. "You really think that'll work?" "I know it will." But you have to stick to your story. Don't admit anything. Don't apologize. Make her prove every single allegation. It was exactly the wrong advice. But Hutchins took it anyway. The investigation began the next day. Morrison made a show of conducting it, interviewing Hutchins, reviewing his dashboard camera footage, which conveniently showed nothing since Hutchins had forgotten to activate it. The body camera that should have been recording? Also mysteriously off. The only evidence was Richardson's cell phone recording. When Morrison presented his findings to Richardson 3 days later, his conclusion was predictable. Insufficient evidence to sustain the complaint. Officer Hutchins maintains he had reasonable suspicion. Without corroborating witnesses or camera footage, it's your word against his. My recommendation is to document it and move on. Denise read the report in silence, then looked up at Morrison. She'd dealt with men like him before, men who protected their own, who saw accountability as disloyalty. Your report is inadequate, she said flatly, and your conclusion is wrong. Morrison's jaw tightened. With all due respect, Chief, I have video evidence of the entire interaction. Officer Hutchins's own words are recorded. The racial profiling is documented. He failed to call in the traffic stop, a clear policy violation. He demanded a search without probable cause, a constitutional violation. And your conclusion is that we can't prove anything? Cell phone video isn't always reliable. It's perfectly reliable. What's not reliable is this investigation, which tells me you either don't know how to conduct one or you don't want to. Either way, you're relieved of this case. Deputy Chief Santos will take over. Morrison stood abruptly. Chief, I've been doing investigations for 15 years. And in those 15 years, how many officers have you actually disciplined? How many complaints have you sustained? Denise pulled out another file. I'll tell you. In 3 years as investigating officer, you've closed 87 complaints. You've sustained 3. That's a 4% sustain rate. The national average is 22%. Morrison said nothing. You're protecting bad cops, Lieutenant. And it's going to stop. Now get out of my office. After he left, Maria entered. That could have gone better. It went exactly as I expected, Denise said. Morrison just showed me who he is. Now I know. Maria closed the door. There's something else you should know. Officer Jennifer Blake came to see me this morning. She's been here 2 years, one of only 3 black officers in the precinct. She says Hutchins has been harassing her since day one, racial comments, unwanted touching, creating a hostile work environment. Denise's expression hardened. Why didn't she report it? She tried. To Morrison. He told her she was being too sensitive and needed to toughen up. Get me her statement. In writing. And find out if there are others. There were. Over the next week, 4 more officers came forward. 3 women, 1 Asian American man. All had complaints about Hutchins that had been dismissed or buried. All had been told to deal with it, to stop making waves, to remember that they needed their fellow officers to have their backs on the street. The pattern was undeniable. And it wasn't just Hutchins, it was systemic. Denise called a meeting with the mayor 2 weeks into her tenure. She laid out everything, the Hutchins case, Morrison's obstruction, the buried complaints, the toxic culture. I need your support on this, as she told Mayor Wells, because when I fire Hutchins and suspend Morrison, the union is going to lose their minds. The old guard is going to push back hard, and I need to know you'll back me up. Mayor Wells didn't hesitate. I hired you to clean house, Denise. Clean it. The announcement came 3 weeks after Denise's first day. Officer Brad Hutchins was terminated for racial profiling, failure to follow procedure, and creating a hostile work environment. Lieutenant Frank Morrison was suspended for 30 days without pay for obstruction of an investigation and failure to properly document complaints. The union went ballistic. They filed grievances, threatened lawsuits, held a press conference calling Richardson a divisive figure who was destroying morale. But something unexpected happened. The community rallied around her. Citizens who'd been harassed by Hutchins came forward with their own stories. The 2 young female officers who'd looked hopeful during that first briefing, they became vocal supporters, inspiring others to speak up. And slowly, the culture began to shift. 6 months later, Denise stood in the same briefing room for the morning roll call. The faces looking back at her were different now. Morrison had taken early retirement. Hutchins was gone, working security at a shopping mall. 5 other problem officers had transferred or resigned rather than adapt. But new faces had taken their places. Diverse faces. Officers who wanted to be there, who believed in the mission, who understood that the badge was a responsibility, not a weapon. Officer Jennifer Blake was among them, no longer afraid to speak up, no longer looking over her shoulder. "Good morning," Denise said, and this time the chorus of "Good morning, Chief" was genuine. After the briefing, Maria pulled her aside. "You know what today is?" "What?" 6 months since you started. 6 months since the traffic stop that changed everything." Denise smiled slightly. "You think Hutchins ever realizes what he did?" "Probably not. Men like that never do. They think they're the victims. Maybe. But I hope somewhere, somehow, he learned something. Even if it's just that actions have consequences." They walked together toward the chief's office. Through the windows, Denise could see her precinct at work. Officers talking with community members, paperwork being filed properly, body cameras being worn. The changes were small, incremental, but they were real. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. "Chief Richardson, you don't know me, but I wanted to thank you. I'm a black woman who lives in the 12th precinct. I used to be afraid every time I saw a police car. But yesterday, Officer Blake helped me when my car broke down. She was kind, professional, respectful. For the first time in my life, I felt protected by the police instead of afraid of them. Thank you for making that possible." Denise read it twice, then showed it to Maria. "That," Maria said softly, "is why you do this job." "Yeah," Denise agreed. "It is." That evening, as Denise drove home in her BMW, the same car that had triggered everything, she thought about how one moment could change so much. If Hutchins had just treated her with basic respect that morning, none of this would have happened. He'd still have his job. Morrison would still be running things. The complaints would still be buried. But he hadn't. And because of his prejudice, his assumptions, his inability to see her as a human being deserving of dignity, everything had changed. Not just for him, for an entire precinct, for an entire community. She pulled into her driveway and sat in the car for a moment, looking at the chief's badge on her belt. It still felt new, still carried the weight of everything it represented. But she'd earned it, not just through 22 years of service, but through every moment she'd refused to accept injustice, every time she'd stood up when it would have been easier to sit down, every decision she'd made to be better than the system that had tried to limit her. Officer Brad Hutchins had pulled over the wrong woman that morning. He'd made assumptions based on the color of her skin and expected her to accept it. He'd been wrong, and his mistake had exposed a rot that needed to be cut out. Sometimes justice isn't about revenge. It's about accountability. It's about making sure the next person doesn't have to go through what you went through. It's about leaving things better than you found them. Denise Richardson had done that, and she was just getting started. As for Hutchins, he was working security at Westfield Mall, checking receipts at the exit. His law enforcement career was over, his pension reduced, his reputation destroyed. Some people called it unfair, called it too harsh, said everyone deserves a second chance. But Denise knew the truth. He'd already had his second chance, and his third, and his 10th. Every time Morrison had buried a complaint, every time the union had protected him, every time he'd gotten away with abusing his authority, those were all second chances. She'd just been the first person he couldn't intimidate, the first person who had the power to hold him accountable, and she'd used it. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss another one. Drop a comment below. Do you think Officer Hutchins got what he deserved, or should he have gotten another chance? Let's talk about it. And remember, change doesn't happen by accident. It happens when good people refuse to stay silent. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.